Okay, welcome everyone. This is the side event at the UN Commission Narcotic Drugs called Drug Policy in Asia, the Importance of Intersectional Perspectives. My name is Gloria Lay. I'm the Regional Director for Asia for the International Drug Policy Consortium, and we're one of the co-organizers of this event. Just also wanted to start by saying thank you to our other co-organizers, International Women's Rights Action Watch Asia Pacific, Insaf Murni, a community-based organization in Malaysia, HIV Buddies, a community organization in Pakistan, and Health and Opportunity Network, also a community organization in Thailand. And before we start, I wanted to make some remarks about the crisis in Ukraine. We understand that there's a massive human rights, humanitarian and displacement crisis that is happening there. And in particular, I wanted to highlight how harm reduction and HIV prevention service providers are courageously trying to continue their work and ensure the continuation of services to people in Ukraine. However, just like the humanitarian support gathered by communities around the world, the supplies from harm reduction organizations are not able to reach all the organizations and people who need it, partly because the humanitarian corridors are having a lot of difficulties in working successfully and smoothly. So we urge governments and the international community to do all they can to use their powers to ensure the humanitarian corridors work well in Ukraine. And so thank you. So to start the event, I'll pass the virtual stage to Vashti from ERO, our moderator for today. Thank you.
Thank you, Gloria. And yes, we are in solidarity with the humanitarian rights crisis that the people of Ukraine are experiencing. And as we continue with our sign event, I am Vashti and I will be moderating our discussion for today. And I am currently with International Women's Rights Action Watch Asia Pacific. And we are pleased to be co-organizing this site event together with our civil society organizations that advocate for intersectional approaches to drug policy. The International Drug Policy Consortium, Insaf Murni in Malaysia, and the Health Opportunity Network in Thailand. We are so honored to have three outstanding advocates from Asia speaking on our panel today. Yati Jonet from Malaysia, Yasir Ali Khan from Pakistan, and Fisadee Sawang Yin from Thailand. I will introduce each of them in a bit more detail right before I invite them to speak. Understanding intersectionality and how to apply it to advocacy for gender equality and human rights is a priority for Euro 18. Specifically, intersectionality allows us to understand how different aspects of a person's gender, social, and political identities overlap with each other, and to understand how this may result in our experiences of multiple, complicated, compounded forms of oppression and or privilege. So to start our panel discussion on the connections between intersectionality and drug policy in Asia, I invite Yati to take the floor. So Yati works as a communications officer for an NGO called Insaf Murni, offering care services for people in different situations of vulnerability, including women and transgender women who use drugs in Malaysia. She is a long-time advocate for harm reduction and human rights for women who use drugs. VP, the space is yours.
Okay, I'll be sharing my screen now. Thank you, Ms. Moderator Vashti, and also the organizers, and including the co-organizers. I think this is my second experience speaking at the UNODC levels to call to reform drug policies in my countries. As introduced by Vashti, exaggerated a bit. I will bring to you all a real life stories which I managed to gather how we must have an intersectional perspective framework in our drug policies, because we are not just men and women in this world. There are many other genders too. And this voice is a lesson that call upon our government to reform drug policies. Under Inspire project in Malaysia, a small project where it's an empowerment grant for women and transgender, including spouses and also youth who uses drugs. Goal 1, assessing needs. Goal 2, building resilience, training peers. And goal 3 is promoting drug policy reform through the storytellings and live evidence. Targeted group for this project, it's going to be like a 3 years project. Targeted group is women who use drugs, which including sex workers, transgender, trans women, trans men, spouses of partners who is using drugs, who probably using and also not using, and youth which under 18 to 28 years old, and also youth who use drugs, youth who has parents who use drugs, and youth who use drugs age 18 to 28. So from there, recently last year, October to December, we managed to implement interviews and focus group discussion, and these are the real stories that comes from the goal 1. I mean, this is a living evidence that shows how intersectional perspectives in drug policies or drug interventions really needs to be on the table urgently. The first group is among women who use drugs. I will be quoting what the real voice from the real woman, I mean the real people who is affected directly by the drug policies. She's been in prison for 20 times, and with the criminal records, she became a real target by the enforcement agencies. And upon roadblocks, she was, although she was urine negative, she was still charged with longer prison time because of the repetitive offenders that she has before. And she fight hard. And lastly, she won, and she managed to get out, but she have to live, she have to go through a very hard and painful 75 days in remand, in lockups without her methadone treatment. And it's really a traumatic experience for her. And there's a stories come out from a woman also that she knows a woman where children were taken away by the welfare department due to the prison time, and she became depressed. Along the time, her drug use worsened and her savings depleted. And until now, I myself can see her living on the streets without knowing where or how to help, how to seek help. This is like not just 1 or 2 stories, it's really happening in our countries. So for transgender, this includes trans men and trans women. There's no drug treatment services specific for these populations are available in my country. Although like these ladies, they are seeking like a good time to seek for to get better from their drug issues. But when they were denied, or when they were denied by the service providers by saying that we don't know where to put you, either in a setting or in the women setting. So this is quite a serious matter, and I think this lady has been talking about this matter like for the past 5 years, and until now there's no action were taken. Quite sad. And for the spouses of people who use drugs, there are stories that the wife, I mean, she was influenced by husband where previously she was not a user. But while she was using with her husband, she can call herself as a functional drug user because she was able to stop at any time at all. I mean, whenever she wanted to stop, she would stop, and she can stop. And there's a stories about when the husband was arrested and detained, she has a very hard time, difficulty sustaining herself because she has to take care of the kids. She have to be the breadwinner. She have to think about how she need to go on with her life in financially, emotionally, and without knowing what happened to her husband in the rehab or in prison setting. It is really affected this lady, and by right, she has the right to know what is happening to her husband. So among the youth who use drugs, they are like serious need to have like a family and institutional support, where the family really wants to support the youth, but then there is no specific services that tailored to the needs of the youth who use drugs. It could be maybe this guy is living with HIV, or maybe this not maybe because this guy is living with HIV, and it's very hard to find like the right services that meets to the substance that he is using. This includes meth and other drugs that were taken by MSM populations. And it's scaring because sexual transmission is among MSM is quite critical high. And I really look into what are the benefit of the drug detention or prison into developing or supporting this population in the coming years, because they're still young, and sending them to prison time, it won't do any good other than like traumatic experience, and also long time. I mean, they have to live with their criminal record along the time until their last breath. And there are I just want to note that there have been conflicted views among the youth, where they thought that the detention centers, rehab centers in our country is the sole agencies that can help drug users in their drug issues. But along the time when we ask question more deep, they realize that, oh yeah, why I have to be there in like detention centers for many times. And they started to change. They wanted to change the narrative as before. So in conclusions, my team, Inspire Malaysia, have already agreed to say that the system is like a failed system. I mean, our drug policy is a failed drug policies, and because there's no intersectional perspective or approaches are available, that includes people who is in poverty, ages, and also different types of drugs that is happening here. I mean, I think across the globe. So we do have like more stories, and the reports will be coming out by end of this year, and we'll be sharing the reports globally as before, because I have experienced that issues like this is too sensitive to be talked about in outside Malaysia, but from the funding that I have, I managed to get these stories out, and I really need, on behalf of my community, it's a urgent call to reform punitive laws into a tailored-based services, inclusive with transactional perspectives. I think, yeah, I think I meet the timeline. And yeah, thank you so much for listening. You can reach out to me by my email, and acknowledgement for my team, beautiful and sweet team, Dr. Ika, Khairul Ashraf, Nadir, Ernie, or so many of them, Muiz, Nur Hikmah, Afiq, and all the key population that I'm speaking on behalf of. Thank you so much for listening.
Thank you so much, Yati, for sharing with us your findings and for highlighting the complexity of the lived experiences of the groups that you mentioned: women, trans women, young people who use drugs or affected by drugs, also by MSM, and all their complexities and their diversities, and how drug policy impacts them differently, but also how these policies are unresponsive because there is no intersectional lens, and thus the need to push for non-punitive laws that would cater to the actual needs of the key affected population in Malaysia. So I think this is a great conversation, and just to build on the momentum, if you have questions for Yati later, please feel free to put them in the chat box or in the Q&A box. But in the interest of time, we will continue with our succeeding speakers, but we will go back to them later after once all of our speakers have finished their presentation. So now our next speaker is from Pakistan, Yasir Ali Khan, who is the founder of a civil society organization called HIV Bodies that offers help on prevention and treatment on HIV, as well as on drug use issues. So Yasir, you have the virtual space.
Thank you very much, first of all, UST and IDPC and all of you. Yati, it was a great presentation, and I really like your background, sport, do not punish. Yeah. My name is Yasir, and let me share my presentation first of all with you. I have to let you know, first of all, what we are doing in Pakistan. You know, in Pakistan, it's a very complicated work. We are facing a lot of issues to work for the drug issues and policies. There is no any policy. There is only an organization, is the Narcotics under the government, and Narcotics Control, and there are very punishable laws against communities, and there are criminalization in the to the community of the Soji community. So what we are doing, we are helping to the MSM and transgender communities and representing the MSM and transgender and Soji community in Pakistan. And HIV Buddies is trying to help people. So targeted group was the GP, MSM and transgender, injecting and non-direct injecting drugs, stimulant and non-stimulant drugs we are using. So the things are, there is no sport programs in Pakistan. Criminalization is very high in Pakistan. So first of all, that there are a community from the which is illegal in Pakistan, and other end they are using the drugs. There's a double stigma and discrimination against criminalization as well. And there's no any OST programs. People are suffering a lot, and still they are, the UN and the government is trying to start the OST programs, and consultations are they are trying to consultations, and there are a lot of work, but still there's no OST programs, no space for the community, so there are a lot of issues. So same things we are using the yaba, we are using the stimulant drugs, we are using the crystal meth, injecting, smoking, and everything is in the communities are using it, heroin, everything is. So we are doing the campsites. The people are saying there's no any issue in the campsites in the Pakistan, but I'm the real live experience with the campsites, and we are doing it. Where we are helping people to come out of the addiction and these kind of things. So these pictures are in the presentation. And if we are talking about the narcotics control law, there are punishable law if we have using or and have the drugs till 100 grams, so it will be 2 years and 7 years and 14 years and might be whole life. So there are punishable law in Pakistan. So recently I have done research for UNDP Pakistan, and it was the situation analysis of the substance use and dependence among MSM and transgender communities in Pakistan. And thanks to UNDP Pakistan, they gave me the opportunity to work on it. And let me share the issues of the communities. There are a lot of issues in the communities. That's why they're taking a lot of without any sport and work. So there are a lot of stigma and discrimination, which is already I have mentioned, and a lot of harassment because the people are not accepting the trans community and trans movement in Pakistan, even though we have the law act in 2018 for the accepting the trans community, but still there are a lot of issues. Anxiety, loneliness is the biggest issue, stigma and discrimination I have mentioned again, easy target and helpless. So as for my research, this is a proof from Pakistan. We already have these issues, and we have reached 689 people, and but filled from 256 online. In total, will be 319 filled from communities, and this is a good data we have got from the communities. And
Hi, Yasser.
yeah,
I think your audio, the volume of your audio has been compromised. We can hear you very little. So can you
working now.
can you check whether there was an issue with your audio?
Okay, let me might be some issue here. Let me on this. So it's working now.
Now we can hear you.
It might be because it might be noise. So let me come back again. If we are talking about the major issues, I have mentioned again, and there are a lot of discrimination, harassment, anxiety, loneliness, stigma, discrimination, and easy target of the community. Even though we have the
I think it went out again. Yasir, I think your audio.
it's still audio issue, it's working now. Uh, let's see if it's working.
Hi, Yasir. I think your audio has been compromised again.
The virtual life and might be some issue in the audio, so it's not working. Can you hear me now? Yeah.
Yes, I can.
So it's a virtual live, and might be we have some issue with the virtual live. So if you're talking about the research, there we read out 689 people, and out of 689, 319 we get the information and depth into with the PLHIVs and negative people who are using drugs and injecting and non-injecting drugs. So the result was very alarming. There was 76% of 319 people are using substances, multiple substances, crystal meth, and injecting and non-injecting drugs. So the crystal meth was the highest number. People are using every drug that's available, but the most usable in the communities, in the MSM and trans communities, are crystal meth because they like to be high, and so there are some stories from the communities. So they love high fun with chemsex, make them happy and satisfied. So they are using to reduce the anxiety and during the long section of the sex. So the other story is I lost my job due to drug use and second sex. Sometimes I have no money sometimes and buy drugs, so I work for it for sex work, you know. So the addiction is very bad because that's why there's no sports and then they are doing sex work. The friends creating stigma and discrimination, and when they know I'm into the drug use, so they did not allow to go out, and you know this kind of stigma and discrimination. I'm on treatment of HIV undetectable. I do use condom. Somewhere I did not use the condom. So this is an alarming situation because people are not using the condoms and during the sex and using the drugs. So it will be transmitter able. So I did not know about the PrEP, but if it's good protection cancer, so PrEP is not available in Pakistan. So that's why people did not know about the PrEP. So there are some qualitative response of the research. Is a fear of being criminalized. You know, it's very, actually, whenever, if I'm talking about myself, the biggest alarming mental health compromise is due to the criminalization, and so experience of being arrested by police, lost employment, financial difficulties in the loss of assets. So these kind of issues we are facing, and biggest issue is the mental health concerns. So there is no any sport in Pakistan. There are only some few networks. The one is the Hope and one is the HIV, but this is working for the well-being of the communities. So this is the reality of the Pakistan, and that's all. I think I have a very short time. So thank you very much to listen me. I'm so sorry. It might be some issue in my network or might be computer. The virtual life is very difficult sometimes. So if have any question, want to contact me, I will mention my email. And if you guys need the research report, I will send it to them as well. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Yasir, and it was okay for the, it happens. The technical difficulties happen sometimes, and it's good that you were able to get back with your audio. So thank you for sharing and shining a light on issues relating to drug use and SOGI in Pakistan, especially for gay, bisexual, MSM, and transgender communities. Um, you make a powerful case of the need for I think for policymakers to adopt these intersectional perspectives to capture the realities of the targeted populations, especially when they, as mentioned or shared in your slide, that there is high criminalization, and also the targeted groups are easy targets for on these. So our third and final speaker on the panel is Fisadee Sawang Yin from Thailand. She is the founder of the Health Opportunity Network in Thailand, which engages in advocacy and provides care services for LGBTQI plus people and sex workers who use drugs. Fisadee, please take on the space.
Hi everyone. At the first I would like to say thank you for all of you to the for all the partner, and I sorry for I don't have the slide presentation, but and I listening from my script. Sometimes it's better than I speak directly because of we have a short time to presentation. The first thing I think I would like to you all to have to common understand about the drug, and the drug in Thailand made the legal and the threat against the national security in the Thailand. Therefore, the country initiates the war on drug and impose server penetrate on those involved in that related activity. It has resulted in massive person in the prison, overcrowding in the many of the other problems. Being the person who use drug or involved in any other drug related activity in Thailand mean you are defined as the criminal and the bad people and bad person. This narrative and the perspective stigmatize people involved in drug and continually reproduce. For that the lesson since the war on drug began, we have had to fight against stigmatized demoralization, discrimination, and the human rights abuse. Over the past of the 20 years, advocacy on that issue in the country has focused on the reduced HIV prevalence, which has received continually support from the Global Fund. However, reference from the harm reduction focus on the people who injecting that. In the context of the city of the Pattaya in Thailand, where the Health and Opportunity Network, my organization is based, we started to work with the trans women.
Fisadee, I think you are muted. You're muted, I think.
Oh, okay. In the context of the city of the Pattaya, where my organization is based, will start working with the transgender who on the prevention program on HIV, while cooperating with the dimension on the address their marginalization and the needs of the gender diversity. Pattaya is the paradise of the trans women. Many of them have similar story like both of my friends present on the two countries. That is the story of the drug youth. For the Thailand, the transgender who live in the Pattaya have many similar story. A son who fled from the home in the countryside where they were not accepted by their family. A son whose gender doesn't match their biological sex. A son who doesn't live up the expectation from their family, community, and their society. But at the same time, Pattaya is not a paradise for everyone. It is a city of the colorful nightlife, calm, dark, and just like any other city. We started to work on the gender, health, and HIV issue because of the lack of the access to treatment after the war on drug started 20 years ago. It affects the quality of the life of many people who live in the Pattaya and led to a lot of life violence and human rights violation. We then start to take interesting in the working seriously on the drug issue with on intersectionality approach which affect our friend way of life, health, and access to treatment. We started to working with on HIV issue where is only thing we understand about the drug use is that it significantly affect and antiviral therapy access. The war on the war is what factor is some people living with treatment program. We working with the improve our understanding about the drug issue by having a focus group discussion with trans women who use drug and their story about their first-hand experience allow us to learn more about their drug use pattern, background of the connection with their trans identity, as well as livelihood in the Pattaya. And many of them work as the showgirl, bartender, a go-go girl, dancer, and sex worker. We now understand that the ART access was in disruption when they are arrested for drug use. Also, they were afraid that their identity as a person who use drugs and living with HIV will become known, and they would be stigmatized. Drug often doesn't cause that often doesn't cause harm, but the harm is caused from the law enforcement and criminal justice process, and the other people in the authority. The community of the trans women who use drugs share with us that they have experienced extortion, torture, forced labor, sexual harassment, arbitrary detention, and ever lost their friend during their interaction with the law enforcement and in the criminal justice process. Being the trans woman and the other intersectionality identities, such as also being a sex worker, both identities that are not socially or legally accepted, they suffer high level and the stigmatized and the discrimination, and this is hard, and it's hard for them to gain acceptance from the society. And even more so when they overlap with the other marginalization identity, such as the people who living with HIV/AIDS and the migrant worker, as the people who use that, they are seen as evil and the criminal who have to be arrested. Often, even after they have served their sentence, they will be jobless, then homeless, and cycle living with the humanity in the heart, where in the land where the LGBTQ plus people supposedly to call the paradise. Stigmatized and discrimination from the society and government service also identify of the degree of the oppression. Being trans with breasts and long hair, but not having gone through the transition process. When they are sick and get admitted into the hospital, which ward should we go to, female or male? When they are in prison, which jail should they go to, male or female? The service and the policy and the law that only consider in the binary gender system has become the issue people started to discuss. However, there are still no structural reform. For the transgender people, sex worker, migrant worker, people living with HIV/AIDS, the people who are used drugs, homeless people, which is still in the responsible for caring for them. Even the Global Fund program where they differentiated key population into MSM, PVs or migrant, and also on the transgender people who use drugs are not included. They are the people who are left behind and help us to see the importance of talking about the intersectionality approach to responding to issues such as drug user. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Fisadee, for what you've shared. I think especially I think my takeaway from that really is the need for structural reforms. Say, for example, how the binary systems of genders are very oppressive in terms of the policies that are crafted, also in terms of citizenship status, work status. Um, yeah, thank you for that. And I think okay, so now I will be looking at the Q&A portion, and for now, we have two questions. I think the first question is addressed to Yati. So from Connor, um, it states here, so great presentation. In your experience, have any people who inject drugs reported avoiding health services in fear of punitive detention? For example, in fear of being turned into detention because they expose themselves when seeking health services. To our panelists, if this also applies to you, the question also applies to you, or you have a response to this, please feel free to respond also. Go on, Yati.
Thank you, Mr. Corner, for the remark. And when talking about reported avoiding health services, I don't think there are formally reported incidents other than being kept or being look away of these incidents, where we're living in a very suppressive environment, and where punitive laws have given like a green light to the enforcement agencies to do, who can do anything, can detain, can arrest, if ever we were suspected as a drug users or involved in drug related activities. So with that suppressive environment, let alone the health services, even the national aid that is available openly for each citizens will not fully reach out to them, just because of the environment is not supportive. So I have my own experience where I couldn't go even to buy my groceries to face a roadblocks because I have a repetitive criminal offense which can cost me 5 years prison times. So it is a suppressive environment that leads to sequels of events. I don't know about others, but I do have close friends that are having these issues, and these stories needs to be highlighted and needs to come out in a bigger stage, where how hard our lives is, and there's a need to reform the drug policies. I do hope that my answers meet your questions. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Yati. So if you, Yasser, Fisadee, if you think this also applies to you, please feel free to share also.
Yeah, actually, it was a great opportunity, and everyone is share a lot of information. You know, I think we need to work together for the issues, to resolve the issues. Not does not matter about the SOGI status, but does not matter has to be a female or male. You know, if we are talking about the resolutions, we need to work together, and literate authorities. We are not, we are only working for controlling the STDs, and we are working for the humanity. So that's why we are raising the voice of sport, do not punish, so that this aim has to become out, and we need to work for the humanity, the main purpose of the presentations, and raising the voices, and these kind of things. So I think the literacy will work when we come out with the proper information, you know. So I think I have a please I have only one request. Please help people who are suffering with the dependence of the drugs, and they are not criminal people. So we have to love them, and we need to bring back to life. Yeah.
Thank
Thank
you, Yasir. Yeah, I think for our last question for the day, from Connor again. I think this is for Fisadee. I have read that people who inject drugs in Thailand are mostly men. It's great that you talked about transgender women who use drugs, bringing in an intersectional perspective. Can you shed some light on the overlaps between these groups and other marginalized populations like female sex workers or men who have sex with men?
Okay, from my experience, I think I lack of the experience from the women who use drugs directly, and we will plan to introduce the women who use drugs in the next month. For in my thing, the women have the violence, more violence than the transgender because of the physical that the women when they arrest from the police. I found it and heard that from some friends talking about they found that the harassment from the law enforcement. For the in Thailand at this time we have the many various of the people who use that we have the friend that we work with in terms of the chemical sex that have the game in the famous in Thailand at this time, and we have the small group that we have to work on the advocacy in Thailand right now. I think the story come from my friend is similarly about in terms of the violence from the law enforcement, but it's different from the way of the life because of in terms of the gay men in Thailand. We found that the intersectionality like gender identity and they have the layer of the orange sexual orientation, and I think it means we have the more and more experience from the youth that don't understand about from the community or the society because of the Thailand will that only focus on the period, and we have the gay men and we have the women who are the sex worker and use that for the customer. That's it. But the more detail about the dark various of youth cannot record because of no one to I mean it no one to interact on that. That is we have the big data from the experience that no one know about that, and I found that we have the problem from the maybe คุณอันอาจจะช่วยได้นะคะเพราะว่าคือเราพบว่า sorry for everyone that we have the คุณอัน that can translate for me because of it's very hard for me to speak English directly. น้องอันอาจจะช่วยพี่ได้ว่าในสิ่งที่เราพบก็คือว่าเราพบว่ากระบวนการบำบัดเนี่ยมันไม่ได้ถูกคือคนที่อยู่ในกระบวนการบำบัดโดยเฉพาะคนที่เป็นหน่วยงานภาครัฐเนี่ยก็ยังไม่ได้มีความเข้าใจในเรื่องของ soci หรือ intersectionality เท่าไหร่เนาะเพราะว่าถ้าในกลุ่มเกย์แมนหรือกลุ่มอื่นๆที่ใช้ยาเพื่อที่จะการมีเพศสัมพันธ์ใช้ยาเพื่อที่จะเป็นรสนิยมเพศอะไรเงี้ยเหล่านี้คือหน่วยงานภาครัฐ ของเราเนี่ยยังในด้านการบำบัดยังไปไม่ถึงนะคะ
Okay, so yeah, from our work, we have found out that the treatment process, especially like from the government institute, services from government institutions, they still don't understand the complexity of like the population, like SOGI or intersectionality, and therefore don't have the ability of services that would address the problems that specific populations would face. For example, gay men who use drugs. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Fisadee, for answering, for responding. We have one more question, but we don't have time. I think we can just have like a 1 minute wrap up or last, I think, the closing words from our panelists, Yati, Fisadee, and then Yasir. So feel free to take up this.
I do have like 1 or 2 minutes, right? For the question, thanks, Murni, for the question. And I cannot really answer specifically to your questions, as if for women, transgender, what are the key elements? I just want to say that this also involved with like language, how we address complexity. And I think I always see every drug user who is having like issues in their drug use, they are very unique in their way. They are very, they have their own issues that they are facing that makes them using drugs. So that's why tailored-based services or approaches really needs to be there, and it based on what are their issues, not how we are going to address them. Not knowing what their issues and just simply try to throw or to implement any intervention towards drug users, let alone the women and trans people, LGBTQ and other populations, especially youth. Is like it's going to be haywire and it's not going to do good other than more harm, towards others, including the beneficiaries. I think I just want to say that. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Yati. It's mean I'm very special person, and so thank you to be a special person. And I think we need to support our communities for betterment. Actually, if we will support them, they will support to others, and peer work have been increased and issues have been resolved. So thank you very much. All of you gave us the opportunity to talk about the issues. Thank you.
Thank you. Fisadee, do you want to have a closing statement?
I think in Thailand we would like to focus on our friend who work with the drug user, because of I think I understand the hard to understand about for them about the SOGI intersectionality, because of I found that many of our friends are afraid transgender, and many of our friends are sexual harassment with women who use that. I think it's very important. If we cannot to change anyone, we can change our work with our community, because of this is important. I found that I found that this is very sad to me to say about we should to look into our community and respect on the identity and should understand more about the respect for the sex or the gender together. That is very important for work in the future. We cannot to speak with the police. We cannot to speak with the lawyer because of we choose to speak with our friend in that area. I think that is for me to directly to change for that. Thank you, everyone about for this session that I think is very important for me to speak out, and I would like to go directly about the intersectionality in the Black community.
Thank you, Fisadee. Thank you for all your closing statements. Thank you to all our speakers and all of everyone who were able to join us today. So we hope that you can also join us in continuing to work towards acknowledging, understanding, and incorporating intersectionality, particularly in the reform of drug policies that are in line with principles on human rights and harm reduction. So thanks, everyone.